going on, everybody? Welcome back to another page from the playbook. This is Nate coming at you guys with another entry in the 32 NFL offseasons in 32 days. Nearing the end of this series, it's always a fun series to do because it really just gives me a bunch more knowledge about these teams. Honestly, having to do all this research on the moves that they made, the coaching staff, the systems they run, the additions through free agency and the draft, just how these teams are going to be different. It's just fun to kind of dive into it all and start getting excited for football. I mean, 2 months away, really, from the Hall of Fame game and from some actual football being played. Cannot wait. But today, we are going to be talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers. All right, last year, Steelers, even when you guys have no business being a 500 football team, just no business at all, Tomlin just does it. He absolutely refuses to have a losing season, and I really do respect the hell out of that because somehow the Steelers snuck into the playoffs last year while getting absolutely no production out of their second-year quarterback in Kenny Pickett and really having to rely on Mason Rudolph for stretches of the season. Not to mention Najee Harris really struggled. And then just a terrible offensive line there as well. I mean, my goodness. The fact that they went above 500 is impressive alone and snuck into the playoffs, unbelievable. That's not Steelers football. They don't want to just sneak into the playoffs and get bounced in the first round. They want to make some runs. This is the Steelers we're talking about here. So what have they done this offseason to get themselves out of that average team tier, fringe playoff contender, doesn't scare anybody in the playoffs tier? How do they get themselves out of it? Let's talk about it. Coaching changes. We do have one here, and the Steelers hired former Falcons head coach Arthur Smith to come in and be the new OC. Maybe it's just recency bias, and I hated watching him with the Falcons because I thought they had so much talent last year. But it really seemed like he just never used his players. And then he started hating on everybody for asking him about it. Like, why isn't Bijan Robinson getting the ball? Why isn't Drake London getting the ball? Why isn't Kyle Pitts getting the ball? And he's like, oh, fantasy football, grumble, grumble. It's like, shut up, dude. Scheme your good players open. Every coach does it. Do it, please. Drove me nuts. He was terrible in Atlanta. And trusting him on any offense is risky, in my opinion. But you've got Tomlin, who will also have one hand on the wheel as well. So maybe he'll lean back into, like, Tennessee style of offense for Arthur Smith. I just don't know what he was doing in Atlanta, man. And I understand he didn't have a quarterback at all, but I don't know. I just don't like bringing him as an offensive coordinator. I just don't love that move, but we'll see what he does. Let's talk players lost. We're going to start with the trade of former first-round pick Kenny Pickett. Got 2 seasons in Pittsburgh, and they shipped him out. That is honestly surprising, but I remember thinking in 2022, wow, that is a massive reach for Kenny Pickett. I did not think he was a franchise kind of guy. Won, some decent seasons at Pitt, but just nothing very impressive, honestly, and I couldn't believe that they took him. So I understand getting ahead of this and trading him away, but wow, talk about not giving him much time to develop behind a horrible offensive line and with no run game supporting him, and we're going to blame Kenny Pickett, really? The second-year guy who needed some work anyways and needed some separators and didn't have any separators to throw the ball to at all. Pickens doesn't separate. Deontay Johnson a little bit, but how much was he hurt these last 2 seasons? He's missed a ton of time. So I get getting rid of Kenny Pickett and just saying, nope, this wasn't the answer. And on one hand, I appreciate them for doing that early and not waiting forever. And on the other hand, it's like, wow, you only gave him 2 years. Okay. It's just the different NFL, man. It used to be 4 or 5 years. You're like, okay, we're seeing something here. Now it's if you're not playing top-level football in the first 2 seasons, you're gone. It's over. No one's waiting anymore. They also traded wide receiver Deontay Johnson, who I just mentioned, in exchange for Dante Jackson. And another move, I did not like this one, personally. I could care less about the Kenny Pickett move, to be totally honest with you. I didn't think he was good anyways. Deontay Johnson is solid. He's an unquestioned wide receiver 1. Better than Pickens, in my opinion. And they haven't replaced him. And now you're going into the season, at this point in time, relying on George Pickens to step up and be that number 1 receiver. Can he do that? I don't know. I don't feel like Deontay Johnson for Dante Jackson was a very fair trade at all. I don't know what the Steelers are thinking here. So I'm not interested to watch the Steelers offense this season. I'm not, because it's not going to be very fun. But outside of these trades, they didn't really lose any players of note, so that's a positive. They traded away their quarterback and their wide receiver 1 and got back nothing. Players added, though. So we just talked about Kenny Pickett. They also lost Mason Rudolph. Didn't feel like mentioning that a whole lot. Steelers addressed this in 2 different ways. They traded for quarterback Russell Wilson, who was forced out of Denver after 2 just absolute disaster seasons. One of the worst trades in NFL history. The largest dead cap hit in NFL history. They are literally paying him $85 million to not play football for them anymore. That's insane. And, he's the Steelers' 31st highest paid player. So he's making nothing from the Steelers. He hasn't hurt them at all. The Broncos are taking on all of that money, and the Steelers get good value for that cost. I mean, 31st and nothing. It's nothing for whatever they had to give up. I don't even have it on here what they gave up, but even if he plays at backup level quarterback, that's still decent value for $2 million. I mean, you're paying most backups way more than that. So even if he's the backup, that's still a good value. They also went out and traded for Justin Fields from the Bears for a conditional 6th-round pick that can be a 4th, depending on a couple of things. I like that move a little bit more because I think that you have a chance with Fields to maybe try and develop him, especially in a run-first offense, behind hopefully a revamped offensive line. And it's another low-risk, high-reward. If he comes out and balls, great, there's our guy. If not, see ya, there's the door. Not a huge problem there. So I like that they went out and got 2 guys that have been starters in bad situations, for sure. And, I mean, you look at what happened to him. Sean Payton didn't want Russ. They were not compatible. Sean Payton wants you to take the short stuff, take what's given to you. Russell Wilson's like, nah, I think I can throw it deep. And he did. And Justin Fields was just never really supported, had an offensive coordinator in Luke Getsy who didn't know what he was doing and is out of the building in Chicago, thankfully for Bears fans. So, I like I said, low-risk, high-reward type moves, which I like. Free agency, though, they did also bring in stud middle linebacker Patrick Queen, stealing him from the rival Baltimore Ravens on a 3-year, $41 million deal. I thought for sure he'd get closer to $18 million a year with how good he is, but to get him around $13 million a year is an absolute steal. Great piece of business. He's not even 25 years old as of today. Not even 25. He has not missed a single game since he was drafted. Never missed a game before. And he's had over 100 tackles in 3 of his 4 seasons. That's fantastic. To get him at $13 million a year is unbelievable value for them. Love that addition. 1, because it helps their team, and 2, because it directly hurts their rival. Not a shot at the Ravens. It's just smart business. I can help my team get a stud, and I can hurt my least favorite team in the NFL. Score. So I like that addition a lot. They've replaced their quarterbacks, brought in some defensive help. I still haven't seen a wide receiver, and this offensive line is still cheeks. Let's talk draft, people. Listen, I, as a Dolphins fan, and all of us as football fans, should never, ever want to draft directly behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. Folks, this is the best draft class from this past draft. This is number 1. This is the best draft class. There's your grade. It's an A+. I'm just putting it up there right now. Haven't even started talking about the players. It's the best draft I have seen of all the draft classes this year, in my opinion. I have them as number 1. You can argue Philly. Maybe you can argue another team coming up in a couple of videos here. I think it's this one very clearly. So I never, ever want to draft after them because they just continue to break my heart. Every single time they were up, they took exactly who I wanted the Dolphins to take. At pick 20, somehow, offensive lineman Troy Fautanu falls, and Steelers snatch him up. I was praying he would fall one more spot. Now, do I know for sure the Dolphins would take him? No, I don't, because I wanted Graham Barton, and we took Chop Robinson instead. And so maybe they wouldn't have taken Fautanu for some crazy reason, but he's so good. He can truly play 4 positions on the offensive line, and he can play them all at a high level. And that's not counting center, which I bet he could play at a high level as well. I don't know if you guys watched the Combine at all, but his work in the drills was the best of all the offensive linemen. His lateral agility is insane for someone his size, but he also plays with great play strength. He's strong. He is quick. He's everything you want in an offensive lineman. Love Troy Fautanu and his versatility. Absolute stud. Unbelievable pick at pick 20. And then in the second round, I desperately wanted one player. One player who I thought maybe could have gone in the first round. And he's still on the board in the second round. He's fallen. And I'm like, oh, man, we're going to have a shot. Pick 51 rolls around, and the Steelers are sitting there. Guess who they take? Zach Frazier, guard center out of West Virginia. That was my boy. That was my guy. I loved watching his tape. He is so strong and so good, and you will not get lower than him. He reminds me of Jason Kelce in that aspect. Jason Kelce, you could not out-leverage him. You cannot out-leverage Zach Frazier either. Nope, not the quickest guy. He's not great maybe for a zone scheme offense. He's more of a, hey, the guy in front of you is who you got to block, just move him, and he'll move them. I mean, unbelievable. He's a bully on the offensive line. I really think in a few years he's going to be considered one of the best guards or centers in the NFL, whichever position he chooses to play. Cannot talk enough about him. So there's 2 starters right there. Boom, boom. What did I say about their offensive line? It was awful. There's 2 starters right there. Then in the third round, they got slot wide receiver Roman Wilson, who fits in with their wide receiver room if you look at it. And no, I don't think he's an alpha receiver, but he is extremely shifty out of the slot. Great speed as well. I really think if him and Russ or Fields, whichever one plays quarterback, develops a good connection, I think he could be a sneaky offensive rookie of the year pick, man. He just gets open. And if they run a good offense, which who knows is Arthur Smith, and you're looking for the guy that's open, I mean, George Pickens isn't a separator. They're going to look for the separator. That's Roman Wilson. He's an absolute separator. So I think he could be fantastic for them. Another pick that I thought was fantastic in the third round, Peyton Wilson, linebacker, North Carolina State. I don't know why he was still available. It's a second-round player. It's a second-round level player, in my opinion. His play speed is unbelievable. We saw his 40-yard dash. He's an unreal athlete. Good recognition ability. Great instincts. Your only concern with him is maybe his injury history. He's had a bit of an injury history, but the dude plays so well. So talented. At pick 98, that's unbelievable value to get a potential starting linebacker to pair up with your new starting linebacker and Patrick Queen. Just revamp it. I love that pick as well. And then just to rub it in, right? Just because why not? At pick 119, I believe it was, whatever pick it was right before Miami, who ended up taking a running back, Jalen Wright, who I like. But they took Mason McCormick, the guard that I wanted. I was like, yes, he's falling, and then we trade up. I'm like, maybe we're going to take Mason McCormick, and then I see, nope, he just went right down. Steelers said, just kidding. One pick before us. That's 3 times that they took a lineman, just a pick or 2 before we could take that offensive lineman that I desperately wanted on my team. Now, would we have? I don't know, but in my fantasy land, we would have taken them, and the Steelers didn't let them. So I have to hate you forever, Steelers. I mean, it was steal after steal after steal. Fatanu, steal. Zach Frazier, steal. Wilson, steal. Wilson, no. Yeah, Wilson and Wilson. Yeah, Wilson, steal. McCormick, steal. They completely revamped their offensive line with 5 new starters, in my opinion. Fatanu, Frazier, and McCormick. There you go. You got 2 interior and 1 guy that can play any of the other positions where you even need him to. To go along with first-round pick last year and Broderick Jones. You've got 4 starting caliber offensive linemen now. Nicely done. That's how you do it. I never want to pick after them again. I never want to have to pick directly after the Steelers. Ever, ever, ever. A-plus draft of all A-plus drafts. Get all the A-plus drafts in a room. They're the best one. It's unbelievable. Great work here. So overall, this offseason, their team didn't change a ton throughout the entire roster, but it did change where it matters most, and that's a quarterback. Obviously, no more Pickett, who was no good, no more Mason Rudolph, and now we're going with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, who I think that combo is superior to Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph. I love the Queen edition. My only complaint about this offseason, Steelers fans, is, and this is the only reason why they don't get an A+, is because I don't see a number 1 receiver in this room anywhere. I don't see an alpha receiver anywhere. Pickens has had some serious character questions ever since he was drafted. Even in college he did. I mean, he's been openly disgruntled mid-game, flat out giving no effort mid-game. I mean, the quote that has been used to describe him is immensely talented and incredibly immature. And I think that that's spot on. And then you look at the rest of their wide receiver room, they're small, quick guys. Van Jefferson's got the most size at 6 feet. Van Jefferson, Roman Wilson, Quez Watkins, Scotty Miller, Calvin Austin. Do you think they have a type? Little fast fellas. And then you got George Pickens, who has to be the alpha receiver, and I just don't know if he can be. But a really solid free agency class to go with an unbelievable draft class. Gives them an A for their offseason. Steelers. Nice work. I am real pissed at you guys. Unbelievable. So that's all I've got for you guys today on the Pittsburgh Steelers. We will see you guys tomorrow for the San Francisco 49ers.